So how do we take that money system and do what people have been doing for ages to make money or derive capital from gambling, or to give the bettor an opportunity to gamble? Everybody wants the opportunity to gamble. No matter who you are, what environment you're in, gambling is everywhere. Especially now, people having these shows on YouTube like this show, but other shows where people are just sitting there. They watch people play cards for hours and hours. So gambling, especially nowadays, is a very hot topic and a hot, almost commodity now. We have a casino here in Massachusetts now. I'm sure we did before, a couple of small ones, right? I'm not sure if Encore was the first one, but Encore is huge. It's a Wynn casino. It's amazing in there. But how do you gamble in prison? You already know about the monetary system. What I used to do was I ran a gambling ticket. And if people are familiar with something called the card, that was something we had when I was kids on the street, was the card. And my father brought it to us when we were very small children, about 10 years old, and said, first was the lesson that if you want to double your money gambling, fold it and put it in your pocket. Don't gamble. That was the lesson my father always gave us. And it was the greatest lesson ever in life. But my father was a firm believer that you can enjoy yourself gambling. He was a very small bettor. We had a common denominator where we bet games every single week while I was incarcerated, and that was our common denominator when we brought up my friend Kessler in to gamble with us as well. So if you're familiar with the card, you could bet a minimum of 3 teams. And if you bet 3 teams with the spread, of course, the spread is, people handicapping a game. They believe that one team is better than another team. And if they give the team, say in football, we'll use that for example, was much better than them, it would be a 7-point favorite, a touchdown favorite. So you would start the game with the underdog 7-0 or with the favorite -7. It would be -7 to nothing. So you had to score 8 points, which is hard to do in football, but you could do it. But you'd have to score at least 8 points to cover the spread. So basically, I'm assuming people know how to gamble or what gambling is and the concept of gambling, but that's just a brief overview. So we had a card or a ticket where you would have the ticket part on the street, and then you would have a stub you would cut off. And the minimum was 3 games. You bet 3 games. If you won all 3 teams, it was 5-1. What we used to play as kids was a 4-pick. You bet 4 teams, and if all 4 teams win, you get 10-1 odds. So if you bet $1, you win $10. Very seldom do you win. It's very hard to win. People do win, of course. Let's get to jail. Jail, I ran a gambling ticket. And I did have options where you could bet single picks for 6-5 odds. You bet $60 to win 50. I also had a 2-pick where you bet the team and the over and under, and you bet $5 to win 17. So it was a little better than 2-1 odds. A 3-pick was 5-1 odds. You bet $1 to win 5. So these were the odds that we had on our ticket. The name of my ticket, the name of the Boston ticket in any jail you went to in the feds was called Bandit. It had a great name, and that was basically the Boston Bandits. That was all of our teams, the softball teams, football teams, anything. And the gambling ticket was Bandit, the Bandit. I didn't run a Boston ticket. I had a ticket with my friend he was from Oregon, a guy named Steve Kessler, and we had a ticket named Oddline, Oddline. And if anybody's watching this that knows me from prison will say, oh yeah, that's the name of the ticket. So we had a gambling ticket. And of course, to begin a gambling ticket in jail, there's other ways to gamble, and I'm going to get into them. It's going to be a pretty long episode, and maybe we'll do 2 parts. You have to accumulate a bank. So you have to buy stamps, right? Because stamps is the money. So you bought stamps, maybe you bought some fish too, but you'd really like to have 500 books of stamps, okay? It's about $3,000 depending on $2,500. So you need 500 books of stamps. You're hoping you don't get hit, but if you're doing it, depends on what the people bet. You might have big bettors. So you know in certain institutions what the betting scheme is, what the betting habits of people are. So that was one way we could gamble. And in jail, especially for me, I always used to say that cuff spelled backwards is fuck. So you never cuff nobody. Nobody ever cuffs. In jail, they give you the money and they give you a ticket. They'll write down the teams they want, the numbers. So my ticket would be a scheme of, say 1 through 100. Or if other tickets I noticed had numbers because there was more than one betting option in jail. I had a ticket. Other people had tickets. I would put like A through Z or AA, BB or C1, C2. So whatever the scheme was, of course, to differentiate the teams. So it would go, say Buffalo was playing the Patriots, it would go Buffalo, New England, over, under. That's how my scheme would go. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 would be either Buffalo, New England, over, under. 1 would be Buffalo, 2 would be New England, 3 would be over, 4 would be under. So that's how, and then we would have teasers. We would have a 3-point teaser, a 5-point teaser, 6-point teaser, 7-point teaser. We would even have a pick 10, move 10 teaser. And that was a pretty popular bet where people really hit that one. In college, we'd have pick 14 teams, move 14 points. That was a crazy teaser. We had a bunch of different options on our gambling ticket throughout the years. I remember one Halloween, we come out with a ticket was all the lines were teased and we gave you certain odds. And we called it the pumpkin ticket. It was on orange paper. It was a betting gimmick. We made a ton of money, but we got crushed for a lot of money. So we ended up like breaking even with that ticket. I remember that one time me and Kessler did that one in Leavenworth. So the gambling ticket was my thing, and I ran one for a very long time. And how did so they say there's 12 different units. What did we do? How did I get to 12 different units? I would have a runner or a betting agent, right, in each unit. So say if we had whatever the 12 blocks were, I'd talk to you. People would usually come to me and be like, hey, man, let me run you a ticket in A block. And what happens was people would usually give the runners 20% of what they brought in. But I didn't do it like that. Because my philosophy all the time was, what my ticket was, why would I pay you if I got hit in your unit? I'm just paying you for nothing. I want you to hustle as much as you can, bring in whatever money you can bring in, and I give you 35% of what you win. Right? That seemed more feasible to me. Why would I lose money and then have to still pay my runners? If my runners lose on their action, and then maybe if I did well in other blocks, I could, break them off a little bit. But I gave my runners 35% of what they won. So they were rooting for me. They were rooting against the better, so it kind of, I thought, worked out a little better. And I bet you at the end it really all evened out. So, but I wasn't going to pay my runners if I was losing. I did that to survive in prison, to do a good bid, to get food out of the kitchen and stuff, So now, so that was a ticket, a gambling ticket that I used to, run myself. I was the owner of the ticket. Now, I had also a card game, because what were other gambling options in prison, right? People will gamble on anything. People will play spades for money. People will play cribbage for money. Anything, of course, can be played for money. But usually what we bet on, we had card games upstairs. I ran a card game in Leavenworth for a few years with my friend Paulie Martin on 3rd floor rec. And, the house would take 10%. So every pot, the dealer would take 10% of what the pot was. If it was $100, we'd take $10. And now, of course, everything was based on chips. You had chips. You would buy chips, and you would buy them with books of stamps. So stamps was the money system, as we have already established. And So those card games would get kind of crazy, and it depends. Like sometimes you would have a limit, sometimes you wouldn't. Maybe there'd be like the betting scheme would be like, you can only, the max is $10. But for the most part, I always played or ran no limit games where you could bet whatever, because you have to be able to guard your hand. If the limit's only $10, it's hard to guard your hand. Especially people in prison knew that, and so I always made it a practice to make my games no limit. And getting back to my first thing where I said cuff spelled backwards is fuck. But when you run a card game, it's hard to, a guy brings up, say, $100 to play with. He brings up 100, goes back downstairs, gets another 100. He's stuck $200. You have to give him an opportunity. So the house would give him $100 that he owed. But when you owe money in prison, it's a bad, bad practice to let people owe money or to owe money to people, because it just never turns out good, So, but running the card game, we always had to have a cuff sheet. And we always had to give somebody a line of credit afterwards, because, sometimes I would kill it. I would make a lot of money in a card game. So, you have to give it. You can't say to a guy, listen, you're stuck $200. And then he's like, hey, listen, I work at Unicor. Next week I'll have it. If I lose, I'll give you the other 100, but I need at least 100. And he was right. I would feel the same way. So you would have to offer guys a line of credit, a little bit of credit. And those never turn out good. So with my ticket, I always had, you give me the money for your bet, I take your bet, and that's insurance. So if you hit, I'm going to pay you. If you don't, I just take your money. And it's a difficult undertaking. Everybody thinks that when you gamble, you just take money in. And you can make a lot of money doing it. But still, it costs you money. Now you got to pay the printer. You got to pay the guy that makes the ticket. You got to pay the guy for copies. Because everything, like on the street, it takes money. Now, gambling is illegal in prison. You can go to the shoe for it. Worse yet, they can come in, find all your stamps and take them. You got 500 books of stamps. They take all your stamps and people hit and they're like, hey, where's my money? And they're like, SIS took it. You can't do that. You have to pay your debts. So that's tough. So now you have the gambling ticket. You have poker, right? You play poker games. You could play, whatever. Dookie Low was a big game. Omaha was a big game. They were kind of this game called Lotto. They played a million things. But there was a game also that I never used to play. It was a huge gambling game. I think I played a couple times. It was called Skin, okay? And there would be so many players, and everybody would get a card. And say if you had the deuce, and you bet against everybody on the board, and all you're betting that their card comes up before yours. Some might have the king, some might have the queen, some might have the 10, and you have the deuce, and you keep flipping cards over. And they used to tell like aces, like an ace, so nobody got it. Okay, now the 10 comes up. Oh, I beat you. I bet you, I beat you. And they would go around the table. It was a fast game. It was a lot to keep track of. I used to watch it. I never ran one. This was a little bit beyond my pay grade. You had to be quick. You had to be sharp. I used to just watch a lot. My friend Broderick Graves, who was, he was my competition in the ticket game, but we ended up being, the name of his ticket was Scoreboard. And he used to run kicks back for the Philadelphia Eagles. Great kid. I talk to him now. He became my dear friend. We were like enemies at first. We ran a ticket. I came to, Lee County and I had my ticket, and he was a black dude. I was a white dude. And, for incentive, I put on one of my tickets, Crack the Cracker. You know what I'm saying? So, bet as much as you want. I got it. I can handle it. But we ended up becoming really, really good friends. And he loved this game. And he would bet, man. This guy would bet a ton on this Skin game. And he knew to call the breaks of the cards, where the breaks were in the cards. It's just like the break would be, I remember one, like an ace and a deuce. Wherever you seen a deuce, an ace was coming next. In reverse. If you seen an ace, a deuce was coming. Couple cards. That's the breaks. Kings and tens. They would follow each other. And they had this theory of all these cards that would come up on the breaks. And Skin was a crazy game. And, that was 10% of the pot too if you ran the game. And that was huge, huge money. People would play real reserved playing poker, but when they got on that skin table, everything was out the window. Like there was, just craziness. And so that was another card game, a skin game, we called it. There was I remember going to other institutions. So in Lee County, we called it skin, S-K-I-N, like skin. And in other institutions, they called it other names. But, people will know the theory of it that, you were betting somebody else's card would come up before yours. One card, you got one card. Like if you were holding the king, I was holding the deuce, the king come up, you got to pay me if I bet you on the side. Everybody bet everybody else in the game. So aside from all of that, those card games, gambling on sports, and, different people had different situations with sports. You might be able to find somebody that would take big action. I wouldn't take action. I'd take stamps. That's what I bet. People would get crazy in jail, but thousands of dollars. It's insanity. But there used to be people that did that. Okay? And so also we had guys so I had a gambling ticket. And you give me your money, I take your bet. There was also people that had something called Freezeouts. And all a freeze-out is somebody gives you a line of credit right off the rip. So I go to the guy that's running the freeze-out that has a ticket and say, hey, listen, I want a $200 freeze-out. And you can bet 10% of your freeze-out on any bet, a single bet, a double bet, 4-pick, but you can bet single bets. So, but the trick was you couldn't have a $200 freeze-out and bet a game for $200. Although some might let you do that. But usually the general rule of thumb is if you had a $200 freeze out, that means hey, look, whoever gets the $200 first, the bookie or the bettor, somebody sends it. If the bettor wins $200, the bookie will send you $200. And I explained how we did that street to street. We did it with stamps. We did it with store. There was many ways you could get paid. And you would kind of have that agreement with the bookie and the bettor beforehand. So you could only bet 10% of your. So if I had a $200 freeze out, I could bet $20 on a game, or $20 on a 4-pick, and that's the way it was. You could get a $1,000 freeze out if somebody allowed that. Usually they were $100, $200, $500 was the most. You got to understand you're in jail, so the money system, the scale of the money system is a little smaller, of course, than it would be on the street. So you had that, a freeze out. I would never do it. I would, I always used to say I wouldn't even give my father a freeze out. Just because I like it where you give me the money. You know my words like gold. I'm going to pay you if you win. And, if not, then I just take the money. But I don't like anybody to owe me anything in jail. Also, we had, aside from betting on sporting events, betting on cards, we had other things where, people would play handball, gamble. They would gamble amongst themselves. You can gamble on anything in prison. We would play hockey. We would gamble on hockey, We always won, the Boston guys, of course, but that was the easy bet. So we also had other guys that would turn, somebody else's misery into a gambling event, right? So we had people, of course I mentioned them before, that were called scandalous dope fiends, right? People that used to do, drugs in jail. So my friend Steve Kessler would have the Dope Fiend Olympics. And he would just fund these Dope Fiend Olympics. Hilarious, right? He would say, get the tourist, 5, he'd go, listen, I'm giving free stamps out in the yard, come, all the, to the people that did drugs. And everybody would show up. He goes, okay, listen, here's what I'm going to do today. Now imagine, these are people that really don't work out much. So we used to do these backward laps on the track. And they would make your calves would be on fire. Even after I did them and I was in shape and I worked out every single day, So he goes, here's what we're doing today. I'm going to give 20 books. Now 20 books will buy 2 papers of dope in jail. And if you're a dope fiend, you'll do whatever for 20 books of stamps. Especially if you could beat these. So they have 5 guys out there, say for instance. Whoever wins today, I'm going to do 5 backward laps around the track. Whoever wins, first one gets 20 bucks. It's crazy. So what you would have is these people that never worked out, that fall, get back up, try to, get. But what would happen after the guy, all these people finished the race, or even went until the winner, and they're like, fuck, we can't win. They would get so cramped up. The next day you would see them, and these guys, they couldn't walk. They couldn't get the chow. I mean, your shit would get sore. Picture if you never did nothing. You'd try to run it as fast as you can, trying to win money. You know what I'm saying? So he called them the Dope Fiend Olympics. And we gambled on the Dope Fiend Olympics on the side. I would bet somebody that said, oh, man, he's in the best shape out of all the Dope Fiends. I'm going to bet on him. And I would bet my friends, anything is a gambling event in prison. And it gets pretty interesting. But that's just kind of a little bit of the gambling in prison. And like and share this. And subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And then we'll be back with more. The Dope Fiend Olympics. Unbelievable. Hilarious.